It glossed over mine. But I did want to see, when I was in New York City, was it last year? We actually could have got tickets, but they were so expensive.
Because it's a good show.
So we did something else.
We should go see it though as a class. For bonding and history.
It would be a bonding experience. I'll tell you what, once you start bake sales, things like that, start extorting money from freshmen, whatever it takes, right? Instead of gambling casino, freshmen are easier to make that way. And
if we got the money, you would take us?
I'd go first. I go to New York City, spend a month, and I want a nice place. And then, actually, you know, if we could, that would be, I wouldn't mind seeing it, even though it's not great history. It would be kind of fun.
Huh? To NYC.
All right, so it's called the founding of the Republic. We're a lot cooler. You're right. I got it. All right, so founding of the Republic.
Yes.
What?
That is not how you spell it.
I can spell it any way I want. Freedom of conscience. Yeah.
That is an
Founding of the Republic. That's kind of dumb.
That's not.
Somebody argue that's better than my normal handwriting is. So, founding of the Republic. It's already full. Darn it, it will be soon. Now, one thing I didn't notice, when I write down things, okay, I'll try to be a little bit better from now on. But when I write down things, make sure you add your own, add to it, summarize what I'm saying, get it down. Because I can tell a few people on the short IDs, you didn't know. It looked like you just wrote down the word I wrote down on the board and didn't add anything. And you know who you are. So make sure you add stuff. It'll help you when you go back and look, you know what you're talking about. So, founding of the Republic. That's pretty good. And let's get one thing very quickly. A republic is a government made up of representatives. Now, we think in terms of electing representatives. They don't have to be elected. They could be appointed. They could be just, I'm your representative. But representatives make the laws. Also, representatives decide or for courts, for justice, and a representative will enforce the laws. And that's a big difference. Then a monarchy, it's not a dictatorship, and it is not a democracy. The United States is a republic. Democracy is where the people decide everything. And also technically carry out the laws. That is not the United States. How many democracies are there, by the way, in the world? No democracies. We'll talk about how the United States became to refer itself as democracy when we get to the 1830s and Andrew Jackson and that kind of thing. So, and duels, a lot of duels at that time. So that's a republic. And what we're talking about in this era from approximately 1783 to about 1815. End of the War of 1812. We might talk a couple things after it, but that's about what this unit is. So, first form of government, and then the Constitution, and it's amazing that the country survived. Took a lot of luck, and some good leaders, and some, and more luck. We'll leave it at that. And the good thing, the British and the French were really far away fighting themselves. There's a shock, huh? The first thing is the wartime experience really affected this. For the wartime experience, there was fear of tyranny, fear of a despot. A despot is a tyrannical ruler, an autocratic ruler. So autocrat means somebody who has complete control. A despot is somebody who makes the laws, enforces the laws, decides justice. That's a despot. And, okay, King George III was not a despot. But in the wartime experience and the propaganda and the feelings, terrified of that. So while the war is going on, the individual now states are doing everything they can to decentralize government. That means put more power in the hands of state assemblies or state legislatures. Yeah. All the states and the national government. They took power out of the hands of the governor. They had everyone had frequent elections, some as many as 1 or 2 elections for representative a year. But yeah, they have elections, but every state had different voting rules. South Carolina, you had to have a lot of property to vote, and only men. Rhode Island, almost all white men could vote, and women with property could vote. That would go away in about 20 years. So every state was different. And the whole thing that really kept it together, spread power out. We didn't want a tyranny. Yeah. They took away the rights from women. Yeah.
Now why?
Because we're women.
Partially that, but the argument is made up women are incapable of making decisions like that. Would be part of there. But the other part is that women did not have the same property rights as men did. And so if they don't have the same property rights, they never really own their properties back in the justification. Yeah, I know you're thinking about it, but women did not have the same property rights as men did. And married women had no rights. Married women were essentially slaves.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
If you think about the Bible, they even say that like if a woman is raped, she has to marry the man who raped her because it is basically committing adultery.
In one of the books, yeah.
Yeah.
The Bible is deep.
Why don't we kind of jump through?
Okay, so the one thing we got to get from all this, though, is they want more power to the states. They're really worried that the states would break off and form their own country, or if the states start breaking off, here comes France again, or Britain, or somebody. And the other thing, they just were terrified if we try to get too strong, these new territories the United States just got would go away and form their own country. And that'd be a constant fear for 30 years after the founding of the Republic. And so, the first form of government of the United States, the national form, would be the Articles of Confederation. It was first proposed back in 1777, but wouldn't be truly ratified until 1781. But in reality, it's not going to become government until the war ended in 1783. So 1783 is the big thing. They're doing this in the Continental Congress, and they're thinking, how do we keep all these bickering states together? So what they came up with is a loose confederation or assembly of states. There's not a strong national government. The states are supreme in this. And they really did think people could enjoy their rights more if you decentralize government. There are elements of truth to that, but as we will find out, it doesn't work that way. This is also called the Articles. Sometimes I say, just the Articles. It's also called the Confederacy. Sometimes it's called the Confederation. I might call them, I might call the Articles. I'm meaning the Articles of Confederation. And what they have is the main power, in fact, all the power is in the legislature. And there are only 13 votes. Actually, this is called the Confederation Congress. 13 votes. Each state, 1 vote. The remnants of this is in, I should add this. It's unicameral. Unicameral means one house of legislature. There's only one. Unicameral. That's an R. That's an A. I know what I mean.
What is the
Unicameral.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
One house in the legislature. The United States, the Constitution is bicameral. 2 now. And every state but one is bicameral. One is unicameral. Obviously, it's Nebraska. Nebraska's a unique animal. But one of the two houses has the legacy of this one vote per state. Which house of the United States Congress today has equal number of votes per state? Yeah, the Senate. The Senate has 2 per state. That means Montana is way overrepresented. Way overrepresented. Do we have the same number as California? You know, Montana, this is helping small states population-wise. Small states love this. High population states hate this.
That works. We don't care.
And we benefit too in the election of the president. We are way overrepresented. So, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but here's the other thing. To pass a law, it requires 9 votes. They want to make sure there wouldn't be laws that could impose their will on the state. So, a supermajority of 9 out of 13, meaning what laws are going to be passed? Any controversial laws? Don't pass at all. All the New England states vote against the law? Not passed. All the southern states vote against it? Not passed. And then to make it even more difficult to do anything, to amend the articles requires all 13 states.
That's never ever going.
So you're not going to change it. And so there are going to be flaws. I mean, almost immediately there are flaws, real problems, but they can't do anything about it. The funny thing about this, states could send as many representatives as they wanted to the Confederation Congress, but they only get 1 vote. So like what is in Philadelphia? There'd be, for some things, there'd be 500 people for the Philadelphia Assembly. They'd be yelling and screaming, and 1 person from Georgia, and they have the same number of votes.
Yes.
And one person who survived the other.
Yeah. Be 1 non-reptile from Georgia. The executive, I should have added no executive. I meant to write no executive. No executive. Who's the executive of the United States government today? The president. They were really fearful of the power in the hands of 1 executive, 1 governor, premier, or they would eventually adopt the president. This is so important because presidents, they're the ones who carry out or execute the laws. They also interpret the laws. And that gave this 1 person so much power, they thought, well, the executive branch will do it. Or I'm sorry, the legislative branch will do it. They execute the laws. That's supposed to be executed. I think you see what's going to happen. No one cares about the laws. Basically, they're going to say, hey, state, you carry them out. And what are states going to say? Eh, we don't like that law. Sorry. This will actually be a big issue going up in the years before the Civil War. It's called nullify. And we'll come back to it. Where states say, eh, we don't like that law. So we just come back to that idea. And no federal courts. No federal courts, meaning no national court system. And so how do you adjudicate if somebody's following the law? What happens if somebody in Pennsylvania sues somebody in New York?
You use the word land.
They actually thought they would kind of come together and find some neutral court, but there was nothing set up. Or for that matter, New York sues Pennsylvania. Or actually goes to war with Connecticut.
Did that happen?
Yes.
Yes.
So, here's the point. They set up the system to be decentralized, but it can't do anything. It can't do anything. There's nothing that would adjudicate the highest law. To decide disagreement between states doesn't exist. You can't carry out laws and you can't pass anything. The national government is worthless. And so power is decentralized, and some states have people with more power, less power. You have 13 essentially free agents doing whatever they want. It's amazing that the place survives. If it wasn't for the fact that things moved a lot slowly in the Common War experience, who knows? So let's look at the problems really quick. Besides these will cause the problems. That's a nice S. I make a 2-part S. The first problem, very basic. Can they tax? They could pass taxes, but who's going to enforce them? Yeah, states aren't going to enforce them. They also thought the states would like donate money. No. If they can't pass, or tax, if they can't tax, that means the entire financial system of the country breaks down. They can't borrow, or for that matter, pay debts. Here I got a big, if you can't borrow, governments can't function. They got to be able to issue bonds. They can't pay back their debts. Who's ever going to loan them money if they can't pay back their debts? And if they can't tax, that means that money, the Confederation Congress issues currency, what's it worth? If they can't tax, by the way, what do you call it if you have the value of money really low? I heard both. It is inflation. Inflation is the value of money's low, but prices then are what? High. Deflation, it's the opposite. You know, so value money high, prices low. You could have too high inflation. You'd rather have moderate inflation is better than any deflation. Moderate. Define moderate. That could be a different thing. And so, once you have that where you can't control your own money supply, that is an economic crisis. Can't control money. They can't control how much money is in circulation, and they can't do anything about the value of it. Nobody trusted it. So think about this situation. You're going to have the Confederation Congress issuing money. All 13 states issuing their own currency. You're going to have cities issuing currency. Merchants will issue currency. And there's still continentals issued by the Continental Congress and colonial money floating around. Oh, and I forgot British pounds are still floating around. Spanish and French money too. What's anything worth? Gold's worth a lot. Currency's worth nothing. And currency, I mean, really, you'd never know if that, you might go into one place or with one merchant and that Confederation dollar might buy so much, go to another place and it'll buy you nothing. So we don't want it. How can you plan for the future if you don't know what money is worth today? And you really can't plan if you have no idea that money will be worth anything at all tomorrow. There's no planning. There's no economic growth. And so what we have is a massive, using terminology that will come about a little bit later, depression. No one can pay back their debts. No one can borrow money. Farm crops went down like a rock. Some states had massive inflation. Some states had massive deflation. It was chaos. Yeah, if a government cannot control their money supply, the entire country cannot function and will crumble. So, we live in a country today. Did you know that?
Really? Whoa.
Who controls our money supply today? Not 100%, but who doesn't? Who? Someone said? The Federal Reserve does. The Federal Reserve, you said it too? I'm sorry. I ignored you on purpose. The Federal Reserve. Anybody have $1 on them? Anybody has a currency? I know you have money. Give me $1. Whoever get the fastest. Oh, there we go. So let me tell you the first rule about this. Okay, so now I control the money supply. Here's a $5 bill. You know what's on top? It says Federal Reserve. They issue the currency. They are a branch of the government. They are the Federal Reserve Board, which actually does a lot to set the interest rates and therefore the value of it. That's what you can. The Federal Reserve are appointed by the president. The head of the Federal Reserve then that's one of the most important people in the United States, probably the second or third most important person in the United States. Anybody know who the chairperson of the Federal Reserve is? Who? Yeah, Janet Yellen. She, first woman ever appointed. Is that what you said? Yeah, she was appointed by President Obama. Her term's about done. And so she's, it was It was a big deal when she was appointed. She was a very accomplished economist. Almost certainly President Trump will not reappoint her because she's very moderate and he is ultra-conservative. We'll come to what those terms mean a little bit later on. It will make sense down the road, but immense power to decide that. And that was formed in 1913. And it really does matter about the value of money because now you know tomorrow that $5 or whatever you had, you'll have at least an idea what it will buy. Government couldn't do it. Could not do it, could not tax. That's the most important thing. Government can't tax their money, their currency's worthless. Nobody trusts their currency. That's what happened in Germany in 1923 with hyperinflation. They couldn't tax, value of money dropped down to nothing. It happened in Zimbabwe 5 years ago, where they had 1,000%, a 1,000% inflation rate daily.
Oh,
Can you imagine that? The money you start out with in the morning is worth less than toilet paper by the end of the day. They couldn't tax. So let's go through a few more then. If you can't do that, they also could not regulate, which means control, negotiate interstate or international commerce. I can't write now. I know what you're going to say, you never could before, but yes, I can. Interstate commerce is commerce between the states. International, of course, is overseas. Intra is in between the state borders. So, for example, you're going to have trade wars between states, and states are going to negotiate commercial deals with other countries, which is now unconstitutional. So, for example, what does a cobbler make? And so a cobbler, what did you say, stuff? Stuff or peach. Now, cobblers in New York were being undercut by cheaper British shoes. They're beginning the Industrial Revolution. With the machines, they can make them for a lower cost. So they're undercutting British or New York cobblers. So New York put what's the tax on imports? A tariff on Britain. You know what Britain did? They went somewhere else. Yeah, they dumped, which dumping in a trade term means they traded a bunch of shoes into Connecticut. They put them on wagons and brought them to New York. So what did New York do? They put a tariff on Connecticut. Connecticut put a tariff on New York. New York closed off their border. Connecticut started shooting at New York border guards. Next thing you know, they're at war. New Jersey then jumped in too, because they didn't like New York either, so they attacked. Then Pennsylvania joined in because they're Pennsylvania. So, it's really bad when parts of your country start fighting each other. That's what we call civil war, and we don't want that. So, we do. No way. And I know what else you guys are thinking. Wouldn't it be awesome to invade Wyoming? Yeah, I know.
Wyoming.
Exactly, that's what
You want to win, right?
Or we can take
It's amazing how people are having serious conversations about invading places. I'm glad no one said we don't want them.
There's nothing there.
I wonder if anybody in North Dakota will be watching this and like also writing evil, nasty letter. You have a teacher who badmouthed North Dakota.
That's okay. Where do you
So, also, if there's no one to negotiate commercial deals, there's nobody representing the United States in foreign affairs. Nobody negotiating treaties. Nobody negotiating, or at least talking about enforcement of former treaties. The United States ratified that Treaty of Paris of 1783. We can't enforce it. We can't negotiate any changes to it because there were problems. The British never left the Great Lakes. Spain started charging a toll to get out of New Orleans. That was violating the treaty, but there's nothing the United States could do. And to that measure, what could we do? We can't negotiate, and who's in the armed forces? There's no military. Military is created by taxes. There's no taxes to build it. there's got to be a law, there's no law, and who would command it?
There's no executive, so
There's-
there's no commander-in-chief.
And the commander-in-chief is an artifact of the Constitution, and in times of war, the president does command the armed forces. Congress later said, yeah, we better let the president be commander-in-chief in times of peace, just to be great. And so, to have a military, the militias could supposedly come, but will the state send militia?
No.
This would actually be a big deal in the War of 1812. There'd be a huge battle, the Battle of Niagara, and the New York militia just watched. They sat on the hill and watched the United States Army lose.
Oh. Yeah, I can just imagine sitting on top of it.
I'm forgetting something.
It'd be the first
Oh, no.
3D.
What am I forgetting?
Are you?
Well, it'll come to me as I start talking, but here's the point. The government has significant problems and they cannot carry out the normal functions of government. You have a bad economy, and there's something they can do to try to get the economy going. I mean, the Federal Reserve now has great ability to do things if the economy is in a depression, at least kind of, and has none of those factors. It is a weak government. Nothing has passed. Only 2 laws from this Articles of Confederation will survive the signing or the ratification of the Constitution. Only 2 laws. The first one, the Land Ordinance of 1785. The big issue is this.
What did these laws survive?
Yeah, no, these are the 2 laws that survive. The Land Ordinance, there'll be 1 more. That were passed by the Articles that passed, that were still, in fact, they're still a law of the land today. This area here, the brand new part of the United States, all the different states had claims to it. Like, for example, New Jersey claimed all this. Pennsylvania, their claim went to the Pacific Ocean. And there were people who lived in Kentucky and Tennessee who had lived there before the United States got that land, before the Revolutionary War, and wanted to keep that land. And so this is going to deal with it. The first part was the states gave up their claims. The states gave up their claims. They made some deals with the debt. The states gave them up. So the land is now federal government land, most of it. So what do you do with it? Well, they're thinking, okay, we want to sell this. It'll make money for the government and also encourage people to come in. So they set up a system to survey the land. And they sent thousands of surveyors out, basically with a sextant to figure out the latitude and a clock to figure out the longitude. And they did an amazing job. And almost all the areas of the United States that will come in after 1787 will be divided up into a grid of north and south lines or east and west lines. And what they did is, I'll draw you a picture, this would be really good. So we have lines like this, all the way across the United States. Huh? They mark it up by latitude and longitude, yeah. So they all have a degree in minutes, every one. And what they did is they divided everything up into 6 by 6 1-mile squares that they called a township. So they divide up into townships. If you ever get to beautiful Iowa and drive across Iowa, that's a classic example where you can really see the certain townships because they put the roads right on. So every road runs straight north-south or east-west. You don't see as much other places, but Iowa's so flat, you really notice it. Southern Illinois is like that too. And then there'll be 36 1 by 1 mile sections. So then they can sell by sections, or half sections, quarter sections. A quarter section of 160 acres was seen as the ideal for a small farm. That's actually, okay, that might work in the east because it rains. In the west, it's not near big enough. And we'll come back to that. They'll give them 160 acres as a homestead, and it'll be a disaster. And then The sale of one section per township would eventually go towards education. We're coming up to public education, but it was still kind of a gray area then. That's a lot of the legacy of Jefferson right there. Thomas Jefferson wanted that. And we'll get to it where it really becomes law and talk about public education would be the Enabling Act. We'll get to that in 1803. But divide it up. Now you see some areas have this, Montana, especially eastern Montana, was a little bit flatter. If you look at a map, a property map, it's all divided up in a nice grid. You have some private ownership, some federal government ownership, state ownership, all by grid. Texas is not like that. Texas does not have sections for townships. Anybody know why? Yeah, their own country, they have their own property rights. You see part of that in areas got from Mexico, like California, New Mexico. But they're kind of 50-50. Texas, none. It's all Texas state land or owned by other people. And then another law, 1787, the Northwest Ordinance. It's technically the land ordinance of 1787, but everybody calls it the Northwest Ordinance. But to get to the Northwest Ordinance, we have to add an N. And then, got to go back 2 years. While they're debating this, the first attempt for this law is actually going to be in 1785. And it went to the Confederation Congress, and it was this. It was proposed by Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson was actually the ambassador to France, but his allies proposed it. And what it said would be this. There'll be 9 states created in the new lands. When I mean new lands, I'm talking here. 9 states. No, they didn't have borders. That wasn't set. But it'd be 9 states. And Jefferson is really worried about the future of this place. That's part of the reason why he was so obsessed with the Mississippi River. But not just that. It's slavery. 9 states without slave codes. So they'll be formed without slave codes. So people will not bring their slaves in. Slavery cannot happen if there's no laws like slave codes. So they don't have not only all those fornication laws and controlling of slaves, but also militias. They don't exist, can't have slavery. Jefferson was terrified about slavery. He knew for fact that a republic cannot survive with slavery. Can't survive. It can't function. There can be no free speech in a slave kingdom. You cannot have freely elected or chosen representatives if you have slavery. You just can't have it. You can't have people who are free who will not agree to join the militia to stop slave rebellions. Slavery will not function. So what that means, if you speak out against slavery, you can cause slave rebellion. Restricts freedom of speech. If the press says anything bad about slavery, that might cause slave rebellion. No freedom of the press. If you elect somebody who might say something bad against slavery, you cannot have a free republic. Jefferson knew slavery would destroy the republic. He knew it. What's ironic about this? He had over 200 slaves. He was hoping if they stopped the expansion of slavery right there, eventually the majority slave states here would eventually just get rid of slaves. Long after he was dead. Yeah, he wanted to make sure other people made the sacrifice. He did not want to give up his fine wine or his library, etc. Anybody want to guess how many votes this got in the Confederation Congress?
0.
1, 2.
3.
8.
Okay.
And it-
Missed by 1 vote.
Who didn't vote?
No, they all voted.
No, who didn't vote? Yes.
Who didn't vote for this?
Is that what?
That one or that one? That one.
All the states with the majority of the slaves. voted against it. If that would have passed, who knows how our history would be different. That really is one of the great what-ifs in history. Because what's going to come out of this? It didn't pass, right? Everyone got that? Did not pass. So in 1785, a compromise was made. And the compromise was twofold. How did someone become a state? What they decided is, we'll have a territory, and then when the territory got 60,000 people, it could become a state. And these states would be equal. At least the states here would be equal. It was not clear if they got other land. But they'd be equal under the law. So Montana would become a state under this law. Became a territory in 1864 and a state in?
1889.
Yeah, 1889. Yeah.
So what was it?
They, first off, the federal government would create a territory. And when 60,000 citizens lived in that territory, it would become a state.
Each state's kind of citizen.
There might be a problem there. We're coming to that.
No.
And one more thing. The 5 states north of the Ohio River. No slave codes. I know the bell rang, but we got to get this down. No slave codes. But if there's no slave codes north of the Ohio, what does that mean about the states south of the Ohio?
Slaves.
They'd have slaves.
Civil War.
We're setting up sectionalism. By law, they divided the country. Is that for me? Dylan. Oh. Have a great day, everybody. Ohio River. Ohio River. They didn't know what the borders would be, but they just knew there'd be.
Did they have to vote on that?
Yeah, it got that actually passed unanimously.
Really?
The Northwest Ordinance. Yeah.
Is that where?
That's constitution. But it was no that question about slavery. How do we count slaves? That's a really big deal. That affects the president. Besides, obviously,
I have so it was great.
right? You're leaving. Sorry.
Technically.
No more food.
No more food.
I just had a Kit Kat brownie with about 4 million calories.
It's
Yeah, it's good. Kit Kat brownie. Kit Kat brownie. Yes. So the bar has been raised, everybody.
I know that's what Mr.
What? How may I help you?
Alright, so I transcribed my interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's in pencil.
That's fine.
So are we sure?
Yeah, this. The big thing about pens was.
Yes, it's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're in trouble anyway, just for being you, but
Mostly it's just drawings. Yes. You don't need to write down.
Yeah.
Yeah, put it on.
No.
We're going to start as soon as we're on the interviews. So please give us one.
Do you
Can I ring that bell?
No.
So I had so much material.
How much?
Hayden!
Housekeeping.
I don't have a limit, but you have to go to ask the question. No.
Okay, like, what if we're like really
Hayden!
Well, look, it's going to be your interpretation. I can
Literally, I just.
Do you go to Canada?
I wish. They didn't tell me.
Why did they know?
Very cheap. They can do it now. Don't tell mom.
That's awesome.
Well, tell mom.
That's great.
You didn't tell mom. They'll be so mad.
And I literally just got your email.
Awesome.
Awesome. That's all we want to hear. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that.
But then why? Why? Because.
Classic. Classic. Classic.
Class. So we have interview. Boo. Get in there. Interview.
I don't have my really yet.
Hey, I just forgot coffee this morning.
What?
I brought them coffee this morning.
What was it, like cowboy coffee? He literally like asked him about it. And he was like, because they're cowboys.
The twins?
Yes. And then I said, he was like, Nick's girl style. Like that's all he would say. Because they went to Canada.
You got that.
Everyone knows that I was in Canada. They've been living in Canada. There's a 126-year-old man in South America claiming he was married.
No way.
Yes.
Alrighty then, I have good news for all of you. Interview day.
Guy,
I hope we had good interviews. Let's go and take those out. Make sure your name is on them.
Oh, I need title first.
Huh? Yeah, sure. Oh, and anybody have platoon? Platoon notes. We got time, but I want to start this as soon as we're done with the interviews. We'll start platoon. So please get it signed, please. I'm begging. Yeah.
Not a favorite.
It'll work. Anybody else with a note? Thank you. And please get this in. You know, I mean, it's a hoop we all got to jump through. How to get a note too, signed.
You know, you can do it without velvets.
That's the point.
Who does not have their note? Who does not have your note in? Please, please. Because what we do is, you don't get the note in, you sit outside, you look in, unless you look in. Or you have earphones, silent, you know, like noise canceling earphones. And while doing wall sits. And occasionally I'll throw bricks at you.
What?
Really?
And
I used to have about 40 cinder blocks. All right, let's go ahead and hand in your interviews. I'm so excited. I do like interviews. Now wait a second here. When I say you have a presentation to do and you're going to present, that means you have to prepare for it.
We're not prepared to talk.
That means you had to prepare before you did this.
I can do it.
Now, for this one, I will let you use your interview or use your paper. But from now on, when we do, then the original Declaration of Independence. But listen up. When we do presentation, the next one we do, because the next unit we're going to do will be you have to do a little bit of research. You have to do you have to turn a paper and do a presentation. Interview and a presentation. You have to have your presentation prepared. You do not get your paper back. Sound good for everybody?
Yeah.
Why am I still? Why do I have Justin's attendance in the past from September 8th? I'm cherishing these moments for next. This, it all slips away. All right, so we're just going to go right in order. We're seated.
We're going by the draft. I told you I wanted to go.
Yes. I wasn't really sure where I wanted to start. But now, the other choice we could have is the randomizer on the attendance.
Randomizer.
Yeah, let's go by draft number.
But Delaney's going first.
Yes. Should I stand
Yeah, because you're number one anyways on the draft. Yeah, I want you to stand up. All right, so everyone, So please weigh it out. Also, the other thing we do for this for presentations, on the presentation we have for a unit, I will actually ask questions on the test from it. Just a couple questions. It's a good way to do it. Now for this one, all you have to do is really act it out. Yes.
So instead of clapping, we use like weird jazz.
Oh, what?
So what we're gonna do? No, everyone. And so, and don't forget, Delaney already knows this by heart.
I don't even need this.
What's the steps?
You're causing trouble already. But just give, you don't have to say the answer to every question. You say what you learned, well first I'll start who you. Okay. And then what you learned, what you thought was most interesting, what surprised you. Things we would find, answers that would be the most interesting from the interview. Now let me sit.
Okay.
The declaration's there.
I need that.
And then when you're done, leave your bribe on the desk and then sit down.
Okay. The person I interviewed, his name is Tracy Vaughn. He's my therapist, so I kind of had to pay to do the interview in a way. That's fine. He was born in 1959, so he's a Capricorn too. In fact. So he was kind of a kid when the Vietnam War happened, but he grew up in Las Vegas, and at the time Las Vegas was like a big military city, and so he had a lot of friends whose parents were in the military. His father was in the military. When he was little, he always thought he would be in the military, and eventually years later he did enlist in the military, but he enlisted it like right after Vietnam happened, like at the very end of Vietnam, and right before anything else happened. So he never actually went to war. He was in the military for a few years, but that's kind of why I decided to interview him, because I knew he was in the war, or not had been in the war, but he was in the military. But since he wasn't really old enough to really understand everything that was going on, I kind of asked him what the child's view of Vietnam was, and he told me all the time that it was kind of solemn. Like there was a lot of crying going on, there was a lot of mourning, and every single day he would like watch the news with his parents. And he remembers watching the draft on TV, and he said that was pretty intense. But he said a big memory he had from Vietnam was when his teachers would sit him down, or sit their entire class down, and tell all of them about how someone's parents had been missing, or someone's brother had just died, or someone was a POW, or was missing in action, and he remembers that a lot. He remembers he would have friends who would wear the POW bracelets or the MIA bracelets. As he grew up, he didn't really understand what's going on. He was like, oh yeah, we're in Vietnam because of communism. And at the time, he was like, oh yeah, fighting the war is good. This is a great war to fight. But when he got older, he was like, oh, maybe that wasn't great. He kept telling me that he was like, we just didn't let the military do their job. And I kept asking him what that meant, and then he just kept repeating that. He was like, it was just a political war. And I was like, okay.